The NIH describes drug addiction as a chronic disease characterized by drug seeking and use that is compulsive or difficult to control, and warns against the misconception that those who use drugs lack moral principles and that people can simply choose to stop using drugs. However, it's not that simple. Drugs affect the brain's reward circuit, releasing levels of dopamine and creating euphoria that is supposed to be naturally generated by daily occurrences, such as going to lunch with a friend or family member, or seeing a cute dog. As the drug use continues, the brain naturally adapts to the artificial stimuli and reduces the ability of cells to respond to it, reducing the high that the user gets. This stage, known as tolerance, is where addiction starts happening, because as someone uses drugs more and more, they become not only more tolerant, but eventually become dependent to the point of suffering from withdrawals if they don't have access to the drug that they now need in order to function on a daily basis. The NIH's description of the addiction process is extremely useful because it debunks the notion that constant drug use is a choice and that anybody can simply quit. It is very easy to become addicted to drugs, which is something not everyone understands. Therefore, it is important to make sure that everyone realizes not only the negative effects of drug abuse, but also that there is no such thing as a safe dose. It's no secret that America is facing a very serious problem with drugs. The use of illegal drugs is becoming more and more widespread, causing damage that can negatively affect entire communities. The war on drugs has seen much media attention, yet the alarming reach of illegal drugs continues to grow. Some people suggest that the federal government take up this battle, but I do not believe it is the most effective strategy. If this problem is to be addressed effectively, the fight against illegal drugs needs to be taken up at the municipal level. In defense of this thesis, I will examine many factors that emphasize the importance of cities making serious efforts to control their drug problems. Among these factors are the uniqueness of drug usage from city to city. In addition, lack of or false information regarding local drug use in areas often overlooked or believed to be free from the reach of illegal drugs will be particularly focused on. The implications of a city's ignorance of drug issues is exemplified clearly in Wes Moore's The Other Wes Moore, a story that shows a community ravaged by drugs, where kids have to sell drugs just to keep food in their bellies, feeding the addiction of countless people in Baltimore, Maryland. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, drug abuse has been a problem since the 90s. In the 1990s, pharmaceutical companies developed various opioids as pain relievers and assured the medical community that they were not addictive, so doctors began prescribing them in massive quantities. However, these drugs were in fact highly addictive, but once it was realized, it was too late. Misuse of both prescription and non-prescription opioids became immensely popular, especially in inner-city neighborhoods in what became known as the first wave of the opioid epidemic. The second wave came around 2010 as heroin-related deaths skyrocketed. As the government cracked down on opioid prescriptions, many people turned to heroin as a cheap and widely available alternative. In 2013, the U.S. entered a third wave in which synthetic opioids like fentanyl reached the market and saw the sharpest rise in drug-related deaths with over 64,000 deaths in 2016. Now the problem has shifted away from large cities and into small towns, where opioids are quietly terrorizing suburban neighborhoods. It's clear to see that the opioid crisis needs to be seriously addressed and action needs to be taken. We can all agree on this, but what is the most effective way to do so? The Trump administration has taken action to fight the opioid crisis and has seen some success. According to the White House, $6 billion has been secured to take on the problem, while new legislation has been passed to encourage safer prescriptions and cut back on the total number of opioid prescriptions. President Trump has also declared the opioid crisis a national health emergency in 2018, allowing the use of many more resources, such as the growth of telemedicine services and appointment of many professionals that can effectively fight overdoses in areas that have been hit the hardest. The results of these actions give hope for the future. The White House reported that the number of first-time heroin users over the age of 12 has been nearly cut in half, and the number of high-dose opioid prescriptions has fallen by 16%. And the White House isn't the only part of government focusing on opioids. The U.S. Department of Human Health Services and the CDC have teamed up to create educational resources and have secured over $900 million for states to fight back against opioids. Though I concede that the federal government is doing a good job creating policies and funding, I still insist that municipal governments can be even more effective. If cities address their own unique drug problems, these numbers can fall even more. City governments don't even need to spend lots of money developing a strategy to fight opioids, since many strategies already exist, developed by cities who took note of their problems and effectively took action. The biggest problem with the current state of the opioid epidemic is that it is heavily present in small towns, where opioids leaked in during the second wave, bringing with them violence, poverty, and crime, ravaging what used to be close, friendly communities. Michael Overd provides a clear explanation for why this situation exists, suggesting that small town citizens are more likely to choose illegal activities just because they have a limited selection. Even though they know that these actions are against the law, many of them seek this type of behavior because of boredom. While larger cities may have many ways for people to be entertained, such as movie theaters, sports teams, and large malls, small cities may have few to none of these options. Small towns have fewer cops, Laverde adds. Even though there are fewer people to blend in with, drug dealers picked rural neighborhoods because it's hard for the police there to address the problem. Big cities often have dedicated drug removal task forces and incredible resources at their disposal. Depending on the town's size, a smaller municipality might have only a handful of officers. Many cities are too short-handed to fight back against drug dealers, making the town an excellent place for them to do their business without the looming presence of police. Another problem is that many of the people who are addicted don't seek help, perhaps because they're afraid to discuss their issues face-to-face or don't have money to pay for treatment. Because of this, it is nearly impossible to truly understand how big of a problem each city is dealing with. Since the opioid crisis is so unique from place to place, federal government can't generalize the situation across the country and create a plan that helps everyone. However, many cities have studied their issues and developed working plans that get people the help they need. In a recent article, CitySpeak has offered numerous strategies for handling drug abuse in cities all across the country. Many of these strategies can be replicated in other cities in the country. For example, High Point, North Carolina did serious research on where drug use was heaviest, and after identifying particular drug markets and street dealers, shut down many such markets and arrested violent dealers. Nonviolent dealers were admitted into a program where they were further educated about the harm they were doing. This improved both the community's standard of living and relations between police officers and colored people in the community. This serves as an excellent example of cities researching and taking note of drug issues and creating effective programs to limit the use of illegal drugs, get help for those who need it, and improve the quality of life for its citizens. Furthermore, it is vital that the serious adverse effects of drugs become common knowledge. Rod J. Rosenstein, former U.S. Deputy Attorney General, proposes that to end the drug crisis, we should educate everyone about the dangers of opioid drugs. Studies have consistently proven that education works, and teenagers and young adults stray away from hard drugs like heroin and fentanyl, usually citing fear as their reason for shying away. If educational materials are distributed in public places, the people that see them can learn more about the negative effects of drugs like heroin and fentanyl. It is especially important to ensure that children in schools are properly taught about drugs and all the ways they do harm, since most people start abusing drugs at a young age. If we can develop a generation of people who are aware of the dangers of drugs and understand the risk they impose, the numbers of drug abusers will fall dramatically. Whether it's the federal government or municipal governments that do this, we can all agree that educating the public is vital to the end of the opioid crisis. Drugs continue to take lives every day, and small towns already destroyed by illegal drugs continue to be plagued by the violence, poverty, and lack of community. That is why it is vital for municipal governments to take the matter into their own hands and tackle the issue head-on by creating educational resources that can be distributed within their community, creating strategies for addicts to get the help they need, and by cracking down on drug dealers in the streets.